What's going on, people? Welcome back to another episode of the FF Ballbusters podcast. My name is Will. Joining me is my co-host, Eric. And today we're going to be talking about 2024 NFL prospects and just how they fit into the Dynasty landscape and rankings. But before we get into that, Eric, you got anything for the people?
Yeah, man. First of all, thank you guys so much for all of the support that we've been getting as of late. It's been fantastic. All the subs, likes, comments, engagement has been great. But we are now on the road to 1,000 subscribers. So we would love to continue that momentum that we've been building over the past couple weeks. We would highly encourage you guys, if you do enjoy the content, to hit that sub button, hit the like button, and leave a comment. Let us know what you think of these videos. If you agree with the rankings that we're going to talk about today, anything like that, let us know in the comments below, and we would be more than happy to talk to you. So yeah, with that, I think I'm ready to get into this thing.
Absolutely. So like I said at the beginning, we're going to be talking about future rookies, so 2024 rookies, and just how they fit into Dynasty rankings. We went over to Tier Maker. We made a bunch of tier lists for the different position groups, and we're just going to go through each one and tell you how we think each of them fits into each of these tiers, things like that. Which position group do you want to start off with, Eric? I'm going to let you choose on this one.
Let's go to the, we focus on Superflex leagues. Let's start with the cream of the crop here at the quarterback position.
Cream of the crop. We are going with the quarterbacks. As you guys can see, we have our pre-made tier list here. It's not really up for debate. This is just how we view the guys now. We already kind of hashed this out, so we're not going to get into that too much. So we're really going to talk about how our prospects, Caleb Williams and Drake Maye, kind of shake out in all of this. With Mr. Caleb Williams, where do you feel like he fits into this tier list here?
Yeah, so basically what we're saying is this time, well, not this time next year, but I guess September of next year, where do we think that these guys are going to belong? Caleb Williams, we kind of talked about it in our 2023 versus 2024 mock draft, that he belongs, in my opinion, pretty much hand in hand with CJ Stroud. And so I think he would fall into A tier. And, if you want to debate where he belongs amongst this group, I'm fine with that. But I'm putting him right next to CJ Stroud is where I would have him.
Yeah, I agree with that too. And this is not to say that, Caleb Williams doesn't have the ability to push himself up these tiers or even push his way into that S tier. But without a landing spot, without anything like that, it's tough to really say what his trajectory is. So I 100% agree. I feel like his production should at the very least be like what CJ Stroud is doing this year, which has been, nothing short of remarkable at the end of the day as well. And as for Drake Maye, actually, go ahead. What's up?
Well, I wanted to acknowledge that maybe this is a little conservative, and I think, it's important to not be too risky or try to get yourself too far out ahead of the market, because strictly in terms of like the talent and what they bring to the table, I could very well see Caleb Williams being a higher end fantasy producer on a year-to-year basis than guys like Burrow, Herbert, or Stroud, but without landing spot and without seeing him versus NFL competition yet, I'm not willing to make that jump immediately.
Absolutely. And we do acknowledge that there are certain parts of Caleb Williams' games that do give him an edge in terms of fantasy production over guys like Herbert or Burrow in terms of his rushing floor. So we understand that aspect as well. It's just like Eric said, the landing spot without that makes things very difficult. Taking a look at the next prospect that we have on this tier list as well, Mr. Drake Maye. After a lot of deliberation, we decided that we were going to set him in one of two places, and we're going to kind of talk about it now. The spots we were looking at was either the back end of the B tier or the front end of C tier. So just to break that one down a little bit, what's the rationale behind that one, Eric, for Drake Maye being either back end of B tier or front end of C tier?
Yeah, so when I initially was looking at this list, I had him at the front end of C tier, and when I talked to you about it, you wanted to put him at the back end of B tier, and I think I came to the consensus that I agree with you. Looking at the guys in C tier right now, we have Tua, Dak, and Trevor Lawrence. Trevor, I think you could argue, has mobility, but doesn't really have the rushing tendencies. Like, we haven't seen him rush the ball enough, and then Dak and Tua don't really do it hardly at all. Obviously, the guys in B tier are very much rushing quarterbacks. What we've seen from Drake Maye in college is actually a pretty high-end rusher. He's actually rushed for more yards than Caleb Williams, although I don't know that that's going to bear out exactly the same once they get to the NFL. But I think the age difference, the ability that I've seen on tape in terms of what he can do with his arm and as a passer, and the rushing floor is enough for me to put him at the back end of B tier rather than the top end of C.
I 100% agree. Just taking a look at purely just the physical tools and what these guys have outside of, like you said, Trevor Lawrence, who just really hasn't put that all together at the NFL level and really shown that he wants to do that in NFL level in terms of rushing. Absolutely, Drake Maye having those rushing tendencies, having that athletic capability, it just puts him a little bit above those guys, like you said. So I love Drake Maye in that spot too.
All right. I dig it. Which position would you like to go to next?
Ooh, let's talk running backs. Let's talk running backs since we've only really got one to talk about here. As you guys can see, we've got our tier list here. Mr. McCaffrey up at the top of it, Bijan, Jameer, Devon Achane. Where do you see TreVeyon shaping out amongst all of these prospects right here? This one we had a pretty good conversation about as well, but where did you land at?
Yeah, this was another one where we're kind of deciding, does he belong at the front end of a lower tier or the back end of a higher tier? For me, personally, I wanted to put him at the front end of B. Just looking at the guys in B tier right now, Kenneth Walker, very talented rusher, doesn't provide a lot in terms of the receiving game and is already, having competition with Zach Charbonnet. You got the aging Austin Eckler. Javonte, who as of late has been, getting a ton of volume and starting to look more like his old self. I think he belongs closer to that tier of guys than like the Brees, Etienne, and Taylor. Just in terms of like prospect evals, I think that those three guys are way ahead of him in terms of where TreVeyon is as a prospect right now. Do you agree with that take, or where do you sit?
I agree with it just because before this, like I said, we kind of deliberated a little bit on these. And one of the good points that you really made was that, at one point we thought TreVeyon Henderson was going to be the RB1 of this class and, was without a question, anything like that. This year, there were some legitimate concerns and questions as to whether he was going to be like that. And when it comes to Breece Hall, Travis Etienne, and Jonathan Taylor as prospects, we never had those questions leading up to the draft at any point. It was just they're the RB1, and they held steady at that. A lot of these guys above TreVeyon Henderson, we can kind of say that was the case for. So in terms of having him down here with these guys, I think it's fair, especially since we don't know what the landing spot is. But at the end of the day, he very well could push himself up into that A tier, depending on where he gets and the volume that he gets and the tool set he does have. But I think it's completely fair to have him at the front end of this B tier right here.
All right. I'm glad that we came to the agreement. But yeah, to kind of add on to what you said, because I think you made a great point when we were talking prior to the video as well. The pedigree is there. Like after his freshman year, people were talking about him in the same conversation as Bijan Robinson. And then he had the injury-plagued sophomore year where Maye Williams outproduced him at Ohio State. And then this year, when he was dealing with injuries, once again, we weren't the RB1. We were talking about Braylon Allen. We were talking about some other guys in the conversation. I think clearly now he's once again supplanted himself as the RB1 in the class, but there's enough question marks that I think B tier is probably where he belongs.
Yeah, 100% agree. And where do you think we should go next?
Well, let's just keep it going in order. Let's go to the wide receiver position.
All right, sounds good. And with that being said, the two guys we got here, we got Mr. Marvin Harrison Jr., and we got Malik Nabers. Where do you see Marvin Harrison Jr. amongst this crowd of people? Because this was a fun conversation as well. This is a good one.
This is definitely a good one. And I would love, for all of these, I would love your guys' takes in the comments. But this one especially, I'm wondering if we're getting too bullish or maybe if we're too conservative. I feel like the range of outcomes, or maybe not the range of outcomes, because Marvin Harrison is going to be amazing. But the kind of range of ideas that the public has on where he belongs right now, I feel like is fairly wide. We kind of came to the conclusion that he belongs anywhere from wide receiver 3 to wide receiver 5, and the conversation to be had is really between him, CD, and AJ Brown. CD, as of the last 3 weeks, is putting up ridiculous numbers. He's finally getting the volume and the use that we've always wanted him to have, and he's showing how well he can produce with it. AJ Brown has been fantastic and very consistent this whole year. So on one hand, you could say like they're the proven NFL talent. We've seen them do it. We've seen them be elite NFL receivers. How could you put him ahead? The other hand, he's generational. He's probably, he's in the same conversation, if not a better prospect than Jamar Chase even was coming out of college. And so like with the age factored in, do you put him ahead of both of those guys? What's your take here?
So me personally, it's the more time has gone along, at first I was saying that he was amongst, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson up there in that tier with those guys essentially, but it was tough for me to keep him up there because at one point, Jamar Chase was the number one wide receiver prospect after a year that he did not play. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's tough for me to really compare Marvin Harrison Jr. to him just because it's different situations right there. But in terms of, like you said, CD Lamb is performing at a spot where he is elite right now. He's putting up video game numbers. But he's also on a team where he's the only option there. Whereas A.J. Brown, he's putting up not even pretty good. He's putting up extremely good numbers as well. But at the end of the day, we do kind of still have to worry about his running mate in terms of Devonta Smith over there if he ends up ever eating into that volume. As we've seen at this point, it doesn't really matter. I think he's going to get his volume regardless. But with Marvin Harrison Jr., there's such a wide range of outcomes because he could also land on a team where he is the sole wide receiver talent there. You know what I mean? With that pedigree, with that level of play, and get all the volume. Or he could end up on a team where he's with a lot of other good players and he could be a second or third option, which at least early on.
I don't know that
early on at least. But
early on, sure. I think the only place where he's a second option is if he goes to the Vikings or the Bengals. Like for real, he's so good.
Yeah, that is true. But what I'm saying is we don't know exactly where he's going to land or the exact situation. So it could be something. I
think the quarterback play is what's most important, that we don't know what it's going to be. Absolutely. We need to see him go somewhere with at least a decent quarterback. And so without knowing that, it's tough to put him ahead of those two guys. But based on age and the production that we're assuming that Marvin Harrison is going to get, I think where I landed is right in between CD and A.J. Brown, considering A.J.'s, 26?
Mm-hmm. And I think that's completely fair, to be honest. And the CD's only 24. I
think so. Yeah.
So, and still been playing at the high level that he is with the team. Marvin Harrison Jr. could very well push himself into this S tier as well. I don't want anyone to think that we don't think that's a possibility for him. It's just we need to see what the landing spot is, because he could end up with the Patriots, and then all you S tier guys, what are you thinking there at that point? It's just Marvin Harrison. I think that's a great spot for him right there.
Agreed.
And then taking a look at Malik Nabers, this is a good amount of deliberation here, but this one's a lot more of a general consensus we kind of landed on. We are looking at this B tier right here for Malik Nabers pretty early on. But where at in the B tier is more of an interesting conversation. I initially said somewhere in between maybe Puka and Jalen Waddle, but then I was able to be convinced to move him up a little bit higher to where he is right around where Garrett Wilson would be. And Eric was able to convince me of that. And Eric, would you be able to give him your rationale for that one?
Yeah, I just he's proved to me as a prospect that I think he's better. So if we're just talking about the B tier guys, I think he's a better prospect than what we saw from Jordan Addison. I think he's a better prospect than what we saw from Olave. I think he's in a similar range of prospect to what we saw from Waddle, but considering Waddle's situation, where he's behind Tyreek Hill and already 25, I'm okay with putting him ahead of him. Puka is an interesting conversation to have because of the historic production that he's put up as a rookie. But I do think that, if Matthew Stafford leaves, if Sean McVay leaves, that gets a little mucky as well. And just from a sheer talent perspective, I would have Nabers over Puka for sure. And so that's where we got to the point where he's like right behind Garrett Wilson.
Yeah, because obviously, Garrett Wilson, not QB dependent, but the situation has been weird with the New York Jets. He's got Aaron Rodgers. It matters
for sure.
It matters. And we've got Aaron Rodgers at quarterback, who situation's shaky on that entire thing. I don't really even want to get into that. Zach Wilson is dust. He's not going to be with that team anymore, hopefully, going forward. But we've seen Garrett Wilson be able to put it all together and show his talents and use those at the NFL level. And we haven't seen Malik Nabers do that. So that's really the deciding factor between whether we put him in front or behind him, and that's where we landed there. Because Malik Nabers, at the end of the day, not the generational prospect that Marvin Harrison Jr. is, which is why we put Marvin Harrison Jr. up there, because he really should be that guy. Malik Nabers is a guy who should produce at the NFL level, and depending on landing spot, could just hit the ground running straight out the gate, or it could take some time, just depending on what's going on around him. But I like this spot for him because it does show that potential while still giving that, kind of a safe floor for him as well.
Yeah, completely agree with that.
And then with that being said, guys, we've only got one position group left. It's the most fun one out of all of them. We got the tight ends.
Fun?
Yeah. I need you guys to understand, we tried to have a deliberation about this before the video started, and we have still not landed at a conclusion yet. So whatever it is that you see us land at here, this is us literally working our way through this answer as we speak. But what do you think on this one?
So this is funny too. I want to mention we had discussed some other video ideas for the future, what we want to talk about in our next couple videos. One of our ideas prior to doing this video was the state of the tight end position in Dynasty, how the 2023 class has impacted the tight end group, how there's a lot more talent, a lot more depth, how that impacts strategy because, you don't have to, there's not, one or two viable tight ends anymore. There's more than that. And so we wanted to talk about the state of the tight end position. And honestly, you might see us do this for each position because I'm assuming we're going to get comments busting our balls about where we have everybody ranked right now. But tight end, definitely the most difficult, the one that we had the hardest time coming to an agreement on and still haven't yet. So I'm very interested to see where we go with this one. But let's start with S tier. Laporta, amazing year one production, perfect situation. Don't see anything changing. Hawkinson, producing at an elite level. Quarterback questions maybe, but I'm confident that there's going to be a quarterback that's going to target him heavily there no matter what. Kincaid, maybe a little bit more question marks than the first two just because, we're seeing him have this breakout without Dawson Knox on the field. But I think he deserves to continue having that same level of volume and usage.
Yeah, it's like if the coaching staff is paying attention, he's earned his keep at this point.
Yes. And I know this video is focused on the 2024 guy. We're supposed to be talking about Brock Bowers, but it's hard to put him into context without kind of defining the other guys. Kelsey, does he still belong in S tier? Isn't he an A tier guy? He's 34 years old. The last 2 games haven't been great, but obviously we're not going to take a 2-game sample size over his Hall of Fame. We moved him down here. I don't know. Eventually the cliff has to come. And with the amount of young, productive tight ends that we have in the NFL right now after this 2023 class, tough to put a 34-year-old guy in S tier.
And being honest at the same time, and this was something we said, or I said before the video too, Travis Kelce is an S tier player with A tier value. So sort of at that point, no one's trading a hole for Travis Kelce. But in terms of the player himself, he's providing at an S tier level. That's not what we're saying here. What we're saying is the value of him, he's down here in A. So
like if you were to go trade for him or trade him away, you're not going to get S tier value, which I think is very well put, and I think that's why we put him down here in A. Mark Andrews, obviously with the injury, but he's been the tight end 2 in the Dynasty landscape for quite some time. I know that Will has some personal vendettas when it comes to Mark Andrews. We had a little bit of contentious talks with him.
Yeah.
I don't know how much you want to get into that or if at all. Do you want to comment?
I've never seen that guy play well when he's on my fantasy teams, is all I'm saying. I've seen him play amazing when he's on everyone else's, but the second I get him, he plays 6 games a season. But hey, it's cool. It's fine.
Yeah. It is what it is.
I'm not bitter.
And then Trey McBride is also a very interesting conversation to be had because some people are going to put him in the same conversation as Laporta and Kincaid, and I can probably make that argument. But the sample size, I think, is definitely smaller. We're talking about legit 3 usable games in his career so far. 1 at the back end of his rookie year, and then 2 in the last 3 weeks. I'm
a little too rich
very
for my
excited. Yeah, I'm very excited to see what he could be, and I do believe in Trey McBride, but I think it's too early to necessarily put him in the S tier right now.
I 100% agree with that.
Now, we've outlined all of that for you guys, and maybe we shouldn't have done that because that's going to hurt our tight end landscape video, but hopefully you guys come back for that as well. We can get into the rest of the tiers also. But Brock Bowers, where does he fit in?
So I'm sticking to my pre-video ranking where I thought he should be at, and mine was right behind Mark Andrews and right in front of Trey McBride in the A tier. I'm only saying that because he's a rookie tight end. I know he's a generational prospect, but we've seen what happens with these generational prospects. Kyle Pitts, we see you down there in the B tier. So it's not too soon on it. We can't jump the gun on it. But I love Brock Bowers as a player. I love him as a prospect going forward. I think the potential is there for him to be an S tier and possibly even one of the best tight ends in the league at some point. But it's just, when is that going to happen? Is he going to land with a team that needs that immediate production? Is he going to land with a team that values the tight end position? Is he going to land with a team that didn't value the tight end position that now values it because they have a Brock Bowers on their team? These things are all out for the jury because the tight end position is such a weird one that we can't really nail it down. And Brock Bowers is also a good enough blocker that he could land somewhere with a dickhead head coach like Arthur Smith, who's like, nah, he's real good at blocking, so he's going to be out there blocking. So, yeah.
Bro, did you see, I don't know if it was a typo or if it was legitimate, but did you see that he was listed as a finalist for one of the best offensive linemen in the country?
And it's stupid shit like that could potentially hold back a tight end's potential in the NFL.
It's crazy.
Or not in the NFL
crazy.
even, but in terms of fantasy at least. Fantasy production is what we're talking about here.
Yes.
Because I think Brock Bowers is going to be a great player in the NFL going forward. I got no questions in my mind about that whatsoever. Out the box.
Yeah.
But is he going to produce for fantasy out the box? I got no idea. And is he going to produce at a Sam Laporta level out the box? Or a TJ Hawkinson level? Or a Dalton Kincaid level? I don't know.
It's tough to say.
Yeah.
It's tough to say. So the thing is, even though we might disagree, we're both saying A tier, which that's barely disagreeing. They're all basically toss-ups. I have him at the front end of A tier in front of Kelsey. My rationale being, of all of the tight ends on this list, he is the best college prospect out of all of them. Now, NFL production is what matters. And before we see landing spot, before we see coaching staff, before we see the rest of the roster that he's surrounded with, the quarterback on that team, I can't put him in S tier strictly off of what we've seen out of him in college. Also, he's coming off of this ankle injury. We got to see him really recover from that, although he is already back on the field, so that's good to see. Can't put him in the S tier yet, like I said. But if you asked me, in a neutral situation where I'm not tanking, I'm not competing, I'm just middle of the road, this is a startup. If you put the 2024 class into a startup and I'm sitting there looking at Travis Kelce versus Brock Bowers, I think I'm taking Brock Bowers. Kelce's 34 years old. I expect him to be a championship contending piece, but if Brock Bowers, does 2/3 of what Kelce has done in his career, or at that, maybe not even the longevity, because that's a lot to ask, but 2/3 of production, early on in his career, give me the guy that's 21, 22, and I'll build around that. That's just kind of what I'm looking at.
I 100%, I agree with that sentiment. To be honest with you, I got a feeling Brock Bowers is going to end up being, in Dynasty, he's going to end up being worth more than wherever it is we end up placing him on this list. Even just in terms of how people are going to value him before
the hype
we
is
even...
going to be
ridiculous.
Come May, oh my God. The hype is going to be wild.
And I'm not comparing prospects because at the end of the day, they're not the same prospect at all. Like we said, Brock Bowers is one of the best tight ends we've seen come out of college, period, in terms of prospects. Ever. Yeah. But in terms of production, we've seen guys with high college production that haven't turned it around at the NFL level yet, like Michael Mayer. Now, two very different prospects. I think Brock Bowers is several leagues above Michael Mayer. But that's just something that can show how a highly productive college player could be hindered by an NFL situation.
I think Michael Mayer is going to have some more productive games at the end of the season. I think we're starting to see him and maybe a little mini break. But your point is well taken. I think the same thing could be said for Pitts, because Pitts is in that conversation for one of the best tight end prospects ever, and we've seen what his career has been so far. So there's definitely a downside. There's absolutely risk, and so that's kind of why he lands right here in the middle of A tier, because you could make the argument better prospects than the guys in S tier. He could be there. He might be there soon, come May, like we said. But also, if he lands in a bad situation or does what Kyle Pitts has done in the first couple of years of his career, he's going to end up lower than this. This is kind of the middle ground where we feel safe.
Yeah, I feel like this is the best spot. So before we go, we're agreeing, and I think I've been swayed at this point to front end of A tier for Brock Bowers as of right now.
Yeah, anywhere in A tier is fine. I think we've outlined the conversation, given enough context where people can decide for themselves. But A tier, I think we can both agree is where he belongs.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely fair. And that's actually going to round out all 4 of our lists right there. So, guys, let us know in the comments. Let's be gentle, but let us know in the comments down below if you agree, disagree. You could even talk about the tier list if you want, if you agree with something else or disagree with anything else on these tier lists. Let us know, because like I said and like Eric said, we will be revisiting these pretty often. So let us know if you agree, if we are missing any context, anything like that you think we missed out on, or anything that you liked. You guys can be positive down there too. You can do whatever you want. But make sure you guys hit that like button as well. It's absolutely free. Best way to get our stuff out there in the YouTube algorithm. And hit that subscribe button and that notification bell. That way you know when we drop all of our videos like this. And you can stay ahead on Dynasty news and updates. But with that being said, Eric, you got anything else for the people before we get out of here?
Yeah, just real quick. Check those links down in the description below, specifically the one to our Discord. If you're trying to have an in-depth conversation about any of the stuff that you saw in today's video, if you want to ask us trade questions, sit starts, any of that good stuff, just chatting it up in general about life things, come join us in the Discord. We're starting to build a good little community over there. People that we talk to every single day. We would love the engagement, so join us over there. And then also to our sponsors, Dynasty Owner, and also Do Numbers, if you're interested in some sweet apparel, hoodies, t-shirts, hats, any sort of merch that you're looking for. Will, are you wearing one right now?
I absolutely am. I'm wearing one right now.
Let's go. Let's go. Go get you one of them CMG hoodies. They're awesome. But anyway, I think that will finally round out the video. If you guys enjoyed and if you stuck with us till the end, as always, we love you, and we will catch you in the next video. Peace.
Peace.